Welcome to the March 5th episode of Recite Poetry here at the Norman Williams Library. Thank you, as always, to Macy Lawrence here filming for WCTV8. And in addition to filming for WCTV8, Macy also sets up the whole room because I'm off there doing like library stuff, and he pretty much sets this up every single time. So it's a lovely thing. Yash, the founder of Recite, who is usually here every single time, is out of town this week, so he's not here. So we're gonna shake things up a bit. And I got some new reading glasses so I can see. It's really awesome. It's not blurry anymore. I don't have to do that. So when I went to Yankee Bookshop to buy my reading glasses, I had to pick up a book, to see if I could read, and I picked up Leonard Cohen because I've never really read Leonard Cohen poetry, and I took it home with me along with the glasses because it's lovely. It's really interesting stuff, very different from Mary Oliver, who I talk about all the time. And Mary Oliver is all about nature, and he's all about people and relationships, and well, not all, there's all sorts of stuff. But anyway, so this for me is going to be an evening of Leonard Cohen. And I'll start with a few. And this first one, I read it and I thought this is an awesome way to start Recite. It's called Song to Make Me Still. Lower your eyelids over the water. Join the night like the trees you lie under. How many crickets? How many waves, easy after easy on the one-way shore? There are stars from another view, and a moon to draw the seaweed through. No one calls the crickets vain in their time, in their time. No one will call you idle for dying with the sun. Okay. And then I'm going to do just a few more Leonard Cohen, just because they're awesome. 53. This is called The Way Back. The Way Back. But I am not lost any more than leaves are lost or buried vases. This is not my time. I would only give you second thoughts. I know you must call me traitor because I have wasted my blood in aimless love. And you are right. Blood like that never won an inch of star. You know how to call me, although such a noise now would only confuse the air. Neither of us can forget the steps we danced, the words you stretched to call me out of dust. Yes, I long for you, not just as a leaf for weather or vase for hands, but with a narrow human longing that makes a man refuse any fields but his own. I wait for you at an unexpected place in your journey, like the rusted key, or the feather you do not pick up until the way back, after it is clear the remote and painful destination changed nothing in your life. Okay. This is called, This is for You. This is for you. It is my full heart. It is the book I meant to read you when we were old. Now that I am a shadow, I am restless as an empire. You were the woman who released me. I saw you watching the moon. You did not hesitate to love me with it. I saw you honoring the wind flowers caught in the rocks. You loved me with them. On the smooth sand between pebbles and shoreline, you welcomed me into the circle, more than a guest. All this happened in the truth of time, in the truth of flesh. I saw you with a child. You brought me to his perfume and his visions without demand of blood. On so many wooden tables adorned with food and candles, 1,000 sacraments which you carried in your basket. I visited my clay. I visited my birth until I became small enough and frightened enough to be born again. I wanted you for your beauty. You gave me more than yourself. You shared your beauty. This I only learned tonight as I recall the mirrors you walked away from after you had given them whatever they claimed for my initiation. Now I am a shadow. I long for the boundaries of my wandering, and I move with the energy of your prayer, and I move in the direction of your prayer. For you are kneeling like a bouquet in a cave of bone behind my forehead. I move toward a love you have dreamed for me. And just one more. This is the love stuff, and then in the middle I'm going to do political stuff, so it won't be all mushy stuff. Okay, but one more. This is called Crazy to Love You. I had to go crazy to love you. I had to go down to the pit. Had to do time in the tower, begging my crazy to quit. I had to go crazy to love you, you who were never the one whom I chased through the souvenir heartache, her braids and her blouse all undone. Sometimes I head for the highway. I'm old and the mirrors don't lie, but crazy has places to hide me deeper than saying goodbye. I had to go crazy to love you, had to let everything fall, had to be people I hated, had to be no one at all. I'm tired of choosing desire, been saved by a sweet fatigue, the gates of commitment unwired and nobody trying to leave. Sometimes I head for the highway. I'm old and the mirrors don't lie, but crazy has places to hide me deeper than saying goodbye. I had to go crazy to love you, you who were never the one whom I chased through the souvenir heartache, your braids and your blouse all undone. There you go, Leonard Cohen. Is there anyone who's particularly interested in starting us off tonight? Or should I just pick a name? Corey?
Sure.
Would you like to start us off tonight?
All right, so you said you were going to read some political poems, so I sort of took that as permission to read a couple. So these two poems are inspired by the poet Russell Edson, who was sort of known as the godfather of the prose poem in America. That's what a lot of people sort of referred to him as. So anyway, he wrote prose poems. They're all sort of absurd and surreal, sometimes Freudian, and it just sort of hit me, not that long ago, that sort of the current political climate sort of seems like a Russell Edson poem, so it inspired these. The First Lady as Victim, after Russell Edson. The First Lady stands behind the unpresidential president as he says deplorable things in front of people with pens, people with cameras. The First Lady's body language is cagey. Her face is a clenched fist. The only expression she can muster is a tepid smile. Her makeup is thick and severe, thick enough to ensure that whatever needs to be covered up is adequately covered up. Her hair is pulled back into a stranglehold. The unpresidential president stands in front of the First Lady, builds himself up for the captive audience until he is as tall as a luxury hotel. The ample shadow is hers to bear. And First Lady as Accomplice, also inspired by Russell Edson. The First Lady floats into the press room in a cloud of tulle and says, "I'm here for my photo shoot." "I'm afraid you must be confused," a reporter stammers. "We were told you had a message for the American people." The First Lady reluctantly agrees to read her anti-cyberbullying speech, punctuating each plagiarized line with an exaggerated pose. "You do know that your husband has a Twitter account, right?" the same reporter asks. The First Lady purses her lips and extends her neck. "You have read his tweets, haven't you?" The First Lady places her right hand on her hip and leans forward. "You do know what a cyberbully is, don't you?" The First Lady slips on her "I really don't care, do you" jacket and storms out. Okay. All right, and then one more. As a kid, I spent a ton of time at my grandparents' house, and this is a poem about sort of thinking about my time there. It was usually Saturday night into Sunday, and we'd always watch CBS Sunday Morning. So there's a reference to that in here. Sunday mornings. Sunday mornings meant turning that spindly TV dial and selecting channel 3, setting up wooden trays in front of floral couches and chairs, Grammy humming above a sizzling pan, spatula clacking, meant rubbing bare feet on the braided rug, Charles Kuralt, Grandpa's presence veiled by a robe and the Valley News or the latest issue of Popular Mechanics, meant a plate heaped with pancakes and strawberries, Andy Rooney, Grammy's salt and pepper hair and pink rollers, meant plinths of sunlight pushing through the streak-free windows, fishing Reese's peanut butter chips out of yellow Tupperware, wishing that trademark sun would not set.
Thanks, Corey. Thanks. So Sandy, you want to be on our list?
Yes, please.
Awesome.
Sorry.
No, it's totally fine. So let's see. Anne Schaffmaster, would you like to go next?
I'm sure.
Okay, Anne Schaffmaster. I remember CBS Sunday Morning with Charles Kuralt. It was wonderful. Yeah, the Charles Kuralt years were great.
This poem is called The Finishing of Things. If I make my bed and say my prayers, if I'm always kind, feed the juncos, even the blue jays, whom I despise, if I don't sleep with my neighbor's husband, who has been hitting on me for years, blue eyes, chiseled jaw, and pouty lips of his, and if I shut up when I have something mean to say, and buy candy bars from the kid for the grade school football team whose parents own the car dealership in town and get an A+ for ignoring me. And if only I can notice instead how the rain toys with the sky, choose to take a nap, a comfort to drift off to the sound of water splashing the hard ground outside, to see the blue turn gray, and watch the windows darken into night from day. If I can change, can notice everything, can please forget the finishing of things, will you come back to me? I'm doing a lot of poems about aging. This one is called The Beauty of Old Men. I will not lie and pretend that I do not miss the beauty of young men who live their lives as if snow will always fall and autumn leaves turn trees into a reliable feast of brightness, as if the world offers but a coffer of joy, and as if there is no price to pay at the end of the last evening day. But you, my love, of sun-scald arms and ropey chest, of woody vines and drowsy lust, have more appeal to me than ever once you did. When the living tissue of the inner bark of the tree gives way to gentleness, and you hesitate in your reach for me, I live fully, forgetting the world of yesterday. Thanks.
Thanks, yeah. All right, next we have Gavin.
Thanks. Yeah, I had a hard weekend because Sunday is 6 years since my dad died, and most of you that have seen me before are familiar with that, maybe, or that situation. Anyway, heavy time, and I don't know, I've been thinking a lot about addiction, and yeah, I'm going to do some poems about addiction and trying to change some things in my life. This one goes like this. Now 7, Damien from down the street measures time ticking with a kind of nicotine precision, proclaims it breathily from between chubby cheeks and sprouting teeth that long bye-week, measured out in state checks and imbalances, in tired-eyed smiles and long miles of financial scrimmages, and they go, and he hopes to deserve, maybe accept something sweet when we bus to buy cigarettes. Yeah, I don't know, that's a poem about your time being defined by another person's addiction, in this case, the person's parents. So, yeah. I would like to not smoke cigarettes anymore. So that's something I'm gonna try. This poem is about drinking. When I was 18, I bloodied my head in Bangkok on the bathroom blocks, door locked, intermittently bellowing and blubbering, "You don't know me!" At old growth companions, balance and ballast pushing through my monsoons, unsinkable friendships, like when chips are down and ground to bone dust under boot heels of torn trust. I'm laced up, playing Satan to my saviors, screaming at unsung teenage angels who'd hung back from the rapturous red glow chaos of Khaosan Road to stay in this pit, to cradle me as I disintegrate, going to pieces again like last summer when Jim wrestled the keys from my hands, pinned my hell-bent neck back to the gravel, javelin-ravaged pinions, flightless in conviction, cowardly kid soaking in wicked sickness, liquor hits the system, misdirected frustration, drunken, wanes on destruction, nothing but insecurity's interior. Rage cracks my voice like my fist through side view mirrors, flinging flesh to the streets, flung scars to her knees, gnashed teeth demanding, madman handling the fearful tears from her eyes. God-awful times, when loving me looked a lot like war. And it's not his war, and it's not hers anymore, but they're here for my burden, to bear witness again the depravity of Gavin, scattered and shattered as all the bitter grains to a fifth of rice whiskey. Too young for miseries like these, a fathom deep and murky, quickly sinking and tongue-tied, except you don't know me, echoes on the tile. I let the tears roll a little, slump my head to the left, snap my head back, smack on the wall, the pain gets big, the feelings get small. You don't know me, only I know. And everything is glowing white and scarlet. I can feel it, this blood cowlick sticky in my hair. But suddenly she's there. In granite-hewn compassion, steadfast stillness, unconditional forgiveness, sitting outside a door in Thailand, quietly telling me she knows me, simply reassuring that love is still a thing. Yeah. So March. This is a poem about March, and I guess it's a poem about change or something. I don't know. The first line is about the poet Naomi Shihab Nye. So you may be familiar with her. She's amazing. A wise woman once said, "Your life is a poem." Sometimes the symbolism is so striking, that black splash, a crow winging through the snow, somber flakes finding their way down through the cherry blossoms to the stooping daffodils below. Those sad, silly blondes, always too early to the garden party, drunk before the band strikes up, but I'll be sober on the sidewalk till spring drags me through my mud again. Once another month, March became a monument to memory. Clever man crammed his funeral in beside his birthday, so I sob and shake and then celebrate. For life is a balancing act, and the gray days will break so very soon. Thank you.
All right, thanks. Let's see. Let's do. There's reason he's the last one, because it's like, what do you say after that? Let's do one more person, and then we'll have our break. Peter Fox-Smith, would you like to be next?
I'll be glad to.
Okay, Peter Fox-Smith.
Six new poems, all subject to revision, 10 minutes. The moon is one of my favorite subjects. This is free verse. Moon Man. Ah, Mr. Moon, I know your secret. You come and go in parts and pieces. Always look me eye to eye, never turn your head about. Your dazzling, formidable crystal shine comes not from you, but is borrowed light from far star that knows not the wolf's howl. As lighted lovers' eyes assume you bathe snow in silver for their embrace, while I, you old lifeless ball of stone, still yielding to your spell, seek new words to write. The next is a sonnet, but it's a strange sonnet in that there are no rhymes until you get to line 8. Line 8 rhymes with line 10 in an unusual rhyme. The rhyme is the word it with claustrophobic. It's a near rhyme. And then the heroic couplet rhymes, walls and thralls. And if you're unfamiliar with the word thralls, it comes from the Nordic tradition. I've got a lot of Swedish in me. It comes from the Nordic tradition, and it means prisoner or servant. The Widow's Winter. A guile moon shines replete in spotless sky, as if new snow was as if were day, when tree shadows stretch taut, still arms across pond, hillock and field, for there's not a whiff of wind glid, till clouds rose and were dispatched helter-skelter throughout lurid skies by sudden gales fraught with snow. Would it never desist? Only February, and it has converted all my windows into peepholes, she mulled, feeling claustrophobic. Old and sparse, she now was quite impoverished, sitting knitting next the wood stove, almost warm, safe from penetrating cold beyond walls, where cower winter's frigid, shivering thralls. I've been playing with sonnets, and the next is a sonnet without any rhymes, if such can be. And you need to know, with regard to this poem, that Mary Oliver and I have a lot in common and a lot that is uncommon. In common, we were born only a few miles apart, nearly on the same day, 30 days apart, and probably even could have hiked in the same woods. We never knew each other, but we both began writing poems at age 13. That's what we have in common. As far as what is uncommon, Mary Oliver became famous, rich, and she's now dead. I'm unknown, broke, and alive. The poem is entitled Asking Mary Oliver, and it's in response to a line from one of her poems, which is, Lord God, mercy is in your hands. And so I ask Mary Oliver, what do poets without God write about? Lost love, nature's bounty diminishing, bitterness, aches, pains, interventions of many sorts, from walking the dog to a somber contemplation on how to spend life's so few hours. Of miracle moments when everything fits together in a smooth, meaningful, and tidy tapestry, words often fail to explain, document, or embellish such rare times. Could or would be goody-goody, especially when it is more apt to note these grave times, which is the way of the world. Always has been, always will be, till all is dead and gone. I love horses. I've spent much of my life on the back of horses. So I wrote a poem. I've written many poems about horses, but this one is called Wild Horses. And what I'm attempting to do, and I said they're subject to revision, what I'm attempting to do is to create a rhyme scheme that gives you a sense of the galloping of horses. Wild horses. Wild horses, imagine my ride. Inside my head, legs tight at your side. In galloping winds, clutching your mane. Wild horse that I ride, your mane is my rein. Up mighty mountain across grassy plain, wild horses, your image does wane, a fantasy gone with wind and with rain, gone with far stars, gone with full moon. Fantasy, fantasy, reciprocate soon. So again, wild horse, together we're one. Wild horse, epitome run. Run me forever, run to time's end. Canter wherever, together transcend. One of my favorite poetic forms is iambic dimeter, which is da 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 da, da 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 da, da 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 da. And this poem, I think, is totally self-explanatory. It's called December 21st, 2018, Good Night, Stephen. My brother called. He has cancer. So did I. Operation, radiation. Our doctor said to me alone, "You're one of the lucky ones. It will be something else that kills you." My brother called me tonight, and he is in the hospital. He's not one of the lucky ones. He's 4 years younger than me. We are old men now. When Stephen was 3, our mother died of cancer. He has no memory of her. Cancer likes our family. First our mother, then her father, her mother, me, and last, so far, is my brother. My brother is in much pain, for which he's given morphine. It is good our family's atheistic. If we believed in God, who was all-powerful, all good, loving, we'd certainly be up a creek to comprehend or explain why a loving God ever so slowly is making my brother die with so much pain and such suffering. In brotherly frolics as young boys, never did we think someday we'd die. Tonight, when my brother called briefly to tell me he is again back in the hospital, that he's in much pain, it was not spoken. Yet we both know well there is that end, which as boys playing ball eluded us. That blunt end, intractable, no, not that word, an end that is just a dead end. And I don't mean that as punning with words or a bad joke. Rather, I mean it quite literally. Eventually, we all walk that lonely, one-way, isolated road to what is nothing more than just a dead end. Good night, Stephen. My brother died on the 7th of February, just a month ago. So on a happier note, one of the shortest poems I've ever written, it's Vermont Trees. Vermont trees, apple cider, maple syrup, serendipities.
Thank you, Peter. Sorry.
Thank you for letting me do this. I enjoy it very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Coming to recite.
It is. It's lovely. I think it's lovely that we all share our lives with each other in this way, in beautiful ways. It's 6:24. We'll take a little 10-minute break, and then we'll come back and do the rest of everybody else. Okay. And since today is a voting day, I thought I would read some poems about society-ish kind of stuff. They're not all political, but they're all kind of society-ish kind of poems, sort of. Again, Leonard Cohen. The first one is on page 84. This is called, What is a Saint? And this is prose, it's not a poem. What is a saint? A saint is someone who has achieved a remote human possibility. It is impossible to say what that possibility is. I think it has something to do with the energy of love. Contact with this energy results in the exercise of a kind of balance in the chaos of existence. A saint does not dissolve the chaos. If he did, the world would have changed long ago. I do not think that a saint dissolves the chaos even for himself. For there is something arrogant and warlike in the notion of a man setting the universe in order. It is a kind of balance that is his glory. He rides the drifts like an escaped ski. His course is a caress of the hill. His track is a drawing of the snow in a moment of its particular arrangement with wind and rock. Something in him so loves the world that he gives himself to the laws of gravity and chance. Far from flying with the angels, he traces with the fidelity of a seismograph needle the state of the solid, bloody landscape. His house is dangerous and finite, but he is at home in the world. He can love the shapes of human beings, the fine and twisted shapes of the heart. It is good to have among us such men, such balancing monsters of love. All right, this one's going to be more political. This is called The Killers. The killers that run other countries are trying to get us to overthrow the killers that run our own. I, for one, prefer the rule of our native killers. I am convinced the foreign killer will kill more of us than the old familiar killer does. Frankly, I don't believe anyone out there really wants us to solve our social problems. I base this all on how I feel about the man next door. I just hope he doesn't get any uglier. Therefore, I am a patriot. I don't like to see a burning flag because it excites the killers on either side to unfortunate excess, which goes on gaily, quite unchecked, until everyone is dead. I like that poem. Okay, one more. 131.
That was called The Killers.
The Killers. And this is the last one I'll read. This is called The Asthmatic. The Asthmatic. Because you will not overthrow your life, you cannot breathe. Because of the panic of homelessness, you cannot breathe. Because you have begun to worship time, you cannot breathe. Because you will never have the beautiful one, you cannot breathe. You cannot breathe because your sorrow will not return to its birthplace. You cannot breathe because you believe you were not meant to be so far away. You cannot breathe because this is the valley of the shadow of death. You cannot breathe because you cannot be here. Because you do not know what is coming, you cannot breathe. Because this world is yours and it is not yours, you cannot breathe. Because you rest, because you strive, because you do not work, you cannot breathe. Because you let the world come between you and me, you cannot breathe. Because of an idea of the calm breath, you cannot breathe. Because you want to choose a way, you cannot breathe. Because you find the language to welcome me, you cannot breathe. The sun is sparkling all over the blue water. The stony shore is laved by the sea. Yellow curtains are sucked against the portholes. The propeller wants everyone to go to sleep. You separate yourself from an unknown woman in a green sweater. Because of your love of conquering, you cannot breathe. Because you will not address me as an equal. Because you have commanded the guards to shut down the doors and take away breathing. Because the world is stamped with order, like a seal in formless wax. Because you have a God of justice. Because the justice is immediate and flawless, you cannot breathe. Because you cannot uphold your separation. Because your strangerhood is defeated. Because you breathe your breath through the mask of purity. Because you consign to the pail of objectivity her green sweater, the flashing island, your distance from love, and your whole breathless predicament, you cannot breathe. That's not a very peppy thing to end on, is it?
That's why he wrote the Hallelujah he did.
Yeah. Should I read that at the end just to make it all better, or no?
Well,
Just
that
let it
don't
sit
make it
there. Let's see. How about Richard Esty? Would you like to come and read for us? Yes.
The first poem I'm going to recite is by a poet who was born in the month of March, 145 years ago, The Road Not Taken. And if probably many of you know the poem, join in with me. It can be a mutual choral exercise. Two roads diverged in the yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both and be one traveler. Long I stood and looked down one as far as I could to where it bent in the undergrowth. Then took the other as just as fair, and perhaps having a better claim because it was grassy and wanted wear. Though as for that, the passing there had worn them really about the same. And both that morning equally lay in leaves no step had trodden black. Oh, I kept the first for another day, but knowing how way leads on to way, I doubted if I should ever come back. I shall be telling this with a sigh, somewhere ages and ages hence. Two roads diverged in the wood, and I took the one last traveled by, and it has made all the difference. And then another, now I'm going to recite two poems by Billy Collins, who also was born in the month of March, and he will be, on March 22nd, he will be 78 years old. I kind of like him. The first one is called Taking Off Emily Dickinson's Clothes, and he wrote this in the 1990s when there was a big academic discussion of Emily Dickinson's gender preferences and relationships and all that sort of stuff. And so he wrote this as a commentary on his view of Emily Dickinson. First, the tippet made of tulle, easily lifted off her shoulders and laid on the back of a wooden chair. And the bonnet, the bow undone with a light forward pull. Then the long white dress, a more complicated matter, with mother-of-pearl buttons down the back, so tiny and numerous that it takes forever for my hands to part the fabric like a swimmer's dividing water and slip inside. You will want to know that she was standing by an open window in an upstairs bedroom, wide-eyed, motionless, a little wide-eyed, looking out at the orchard below. The white dress puddled at her feet on the wide-board hardwood floor. The complexity, excuse me, the complexity of women's undergarments in 19th century America is not to be waved off. And I proceeded like a polar explorer through clips, clasps, and moorings, catches, straps, and whalebone stays, sailing toward the iceberg of her nakedness. Later, I wrote in the notebook, it was like riding a swan into the night. But of course, I cannot tell you everything. The way she closed her eyes to the orchard, how her hair tumbled free of its pins, how there were sudden dashes whenever we spoke. But what I can tell you is, it was terribly quiet in Amherst that Sabbath afternoon. Nothing but a carriage passing the house, a fly buzzing in the window pane, so I could plainly hear her inhale when I undid the very top hook and eye fastener of her corset. And I could hear her sigh when finally it was unloosed, the way some readers sigh when they realize hope has feathers, that reason is a plane, and life is a loaded gun that looks right at you with a yellow eye. And then another poem that Billy Collins entitled Litany. And he wrote this, he said he saw a poem about 40 lines long, supposed to be a love poem, and he thought it didn't work very well. So and I watched him on YouTube saying, well, if you find a poem that you don't think works very well, just rewrite it. So, so this is his revision of Litany, and it's called, You Are the Bread and the Knife. You are the bread and the knife, the crystal goblet and the wine. You are the dew on the morning grass and the burning wheel of the sun. You are the white apron of the baker and the mash birds suddenly in flight. However, you are not the wind in the orchard, the plums on the counter, or the house of cards. And you're certainly not the pine-scented air. There's no way you are the pine-scented air. It is possible that you are the fish under the bridge, maybe even the pigeon on the general's head. But you don't even come close to being the field of coneflowers at dusk. And a quick look in the mirror will show that you are neither the boots in the corner nor the boat asleep in its boathouse. It might interest you to know, speaking of the plentiful imagery of the world, that I am the sound of rain on the roof. I also happen to be the shooting star, the evening paper blowing down an alley, and the basket of chestnuts on the kitchen table. I am also the moon in the trees and the blind woman's teacup. But don't worry, I'm not the bread and the knife. You are still the bread and the knife. You will always be the bread and the knife, not to mention the crystal goblet and somehow the wine. So I just enjoy the way that goes. Now I have if I have time, two more poems. This past month, there were, in the poem a day that I get on my phone, there were poems, several poems, maybe four, written by incarcerated men that the curator of the poems for the month works with. And the two that really struck me, I think, are very personal, beautifully done by young men incarcerated somewhere in the Washington, D.C. area. And the first one is called Sometimes I Cry. And they only give the first name of the poet because they don't want to let everybody know who specifically the person is. His first name is DJ. I told a million lies. Now it's time to tell a single truth. Sometimes I cry. Hard to maintain this image of a tough guy when deep down inside I'm terrified. If I ever told you I wasn't scared, I'd lie. Struggling to make it back to society and my family, I cry. I cry for my son, who I barely see due to these mountains and me and his mom's beef. I cry for my siblings who never knew their older brother because he stayed in the streets. I cry for my grandma who is now deceased. I cry for my life, half of which they took for me. I cry for my anger and rage, the only emotions I can show in this place. I cry for how we treat each other inside these walls. I cry for the lack of unity we have most of all. When will it end? I want to know. Till then, all I can do is let these tears flow. And the second one is by a man called Daniel, and it's called War Within Myself. I've been fighting a war within myself all my life, tired of the hurt, the pain, the strife. Anger consumes me from day to day. Sellies walk on eggshells, unsure what to say. I do pray each night for the peace that I need in my heart. I need it before I tear what friendships I have apart. Prison has a funny way of doing some things. Leaves me wondering what tomorrow may bring. I'm tired of the hate, anger, and pain that I feel. I just want my heart and soul to be healed. I want to be able to simply laugh at a joke. I need someone to help me before I lose all hope. My heart is almost completely hardened with what I've been through. I need someone, anyone. Maybe that someone is you. I'm fighting a war within myself, and I'm so tired, so nervous, scared, like I'm on a high, tight wire. I hope I don't fall before someone catches me. But then again, maybe it's my destiny. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Let's see, Sandy, would you like to go next? And then we'll end with Bob after that.
Wouldn't it be nice if the poems just stood for themselves and I didn't need to say a word? Wouldn't that be nice?
They can.
Shall we try it?
Sure.
Okay, here we go. In the church where I go, we light candles. We place them in a clear bowl of sand. Some are for joy, and some for concerns, and the last one in silence stands. Gazing through windows out to the sky, at the choir, a songbook with a tie. My eyes were drawn to the 7 candles, and the lights of their flames filled my eyes. The candles' bright fires shone deep in my face as white golden lights drew me closer in. They asked nothing of me, but to know they were there, and soon I saw nothing but them. drawn to the candles and fixed on their glow. The dancing shapes had me mesmerized. Yet I still heard the sermon. Can we live here and now, though distracted by worries that thrive? Could the candlelight reach me more deeply than that, burnishing a soul that, like a candle, stands tall? The candle's flame in the here and now are really the eternal Creator's glow. The Visit of a Son, 1980. There's strength and reflection in togetherness, and there's nothing quite like a child's embrace. A mother may wail, a mother may cry, but that won't keep her child by her side forever. It makes no difference how far children travel. They know their connection, their way back home, to the place where they nested first. Family, families, homes and homeless. Where do we roam? Where do we stay? We're always together in forms unshapen, in any way, through the love of soul, forever. Kids come and go. It's the nature of life. They work hard to be free, to survive, to venture on further from the nest, but the bonds will last through the love of soul forever. Child's love, husband's love, like fibers to recognize one another by, and the love that needs no signpost, floats above us, flows through us, can be seen as light. Giving of selves, giving of things, letting gifts come by doing nothing. Mother will teach, child will learn. Child has taught, mother has learned. Choking on shoulds, grasping in fear, waiting a moment until it is all clear. The lingering pain, the healed one, from the visit of a son. We must live in the moment, awake and in dreams. Living this life is not what it seems. There's always a message, an answer, a clue, that deep within us we know what to do, at all times, in all places, with all people, in all phases, through the love of soul forever. Kids come and go. It's the nature of life. They work hard to be free, to survive and venture on further from the nest, but the bonds will last through the love of soul forever. My Sister's Corset. It's 2/4/2019. In Deadwood Gulch, South Dakota, it is the year 1876. My sister and I were left in this town, our broken down coach to fix. My sister, made to be a chorus girl, performed in such a way so gentlemen would give her a whirl, then lay her down for pay. I look at her corset here as it sits on a chair in our room, where it once was filled with her body. Now memories fill this tomb. I dare not touch it, as I fear it is full of failing breath and fire, all bound in laces far too tight as her ghostly voices expire. As a woman, I have blossomed with my sister's legacy to keep. Slipping into her corset now has entrapped me eternally in grief. and has quickened my accepting death, squeezing life from that which I bear. I will fill her corset one last time where her fitful shadows dare. My sister lives only as dusty cast light, piercing through eyelets and lace. Our corset drawn tightly upon my frame, heavy footsteps quicken the pace. One last time for profit, one last time for shame, one last time to be unlaced as I join her in her grave.
Thank you, Sandy. Alrighty, Bob Burgess.
So, I found a few nice little poems to share with you that I've never seen before. And then we'll finish our little play with some, I think, old familiar favorites. The first one is by a poet new to me, maybe not to you. His name is Ron Kirchie. And he's given a little practical advice to a group of young, starry-eyed poets. As we've heard before from the likes of Poet Laureate Billy Collins and from Rilke himself, fortunately Yash is not here, in his letters to a young poet. But this advice from Kirchie is for when these precious young innocent writers asked him, "Do you have any advice for those of us just starting out?" And so he says, "Give up sitting dutifully at your desk. Leave your house or apartment. Go out into the world." He says it's all right to carry a notebook, but a cheap one is best, with pages the color of weak tea, and on the front a kitten. A kitten? Or a spaceship? Avoid any enclosed space where more than 3 people are wearing turtlenecks. Beware any snow-covered chalet with deer tracks across the muffled tennis courts. Not surprisingly, he says, of all places, libraries. Library is a good place to write. And the perfect place, he says, in a library is near an aisle where a child, a year or 2 old, is playing as his mother browses the ranks of the dead. Often the child will pull books from the bottom shelf. The title, the author's name, the brooding photo on the flap mean nothing. Red book on black, gray book on brown. He builds a tower, and the higher it gets, the wider he grins. So you who asked for advice, he says, listen, when the tower falls, be like that child. Laugh so loud everybody in the world frowns and says, shh. then start again. Switching gears, here's a little poem by the Polish poet Wisława Szymborska, who did win the Nobel Prize for Literature in 1996. She's got some great little commentary. In her Nobel lecture, she joked about the life of poets. Great films, she says, can be made of the lives of scientists and artists, but poets offer far less promising material. Their work is hopelessly unphotogenic, she said. Someone sits at a table or lies on a sofa while staring motionless at a wall or ceiling. None of you know this feeling, of course. Once in a while, this person writes down 7 lines only to cross out one of them 15 minutes later, and then another hour passes during which nothing happens. Who could stand to watch this kind of thing? She said. She did write many lovely little poems, one of which is called Clouds. I'd have to be really quick to describe clouds. A split second's enough for them to start being something else. Their trademark. They don't repeat a single shape, shade, pose, arrangement. Unburdened by memory of any kind, they float easily over the facts. What on earth could they bear witness to? They scatter whenever something happens. Compared to clouds, life rests on solid ground, practically permanent, almost externally. Next to clouds, even a stone seems like a brother, someone you can trust, while they're just distant, flighty cousins. Let people exist if they want, and then die one after another. Clouds simply don't care what they're up to down there. And so their haughty fleet cruises smoothly over your whole life and mine. Still incomplete. They aren't obliged to vanish when we're gone. They don't have to be seen while sailing on. Another little beauty I found that's deceptively modest, simple, and day-to-day, titled Love Poem with Toast. Some of you know it. The author is Miller Williams, who simply says, some of what we do to make things happen. The alarm to wake us up, the coffee to perk, the car to start. The rest of what we do trying to keep something from doing something. The skin from aging, the hoe from rusting, the truth from getting out. With yes and no, like the poles of a battery, powering our passage through the days, we move, as we call it, forward, wanting to be wanted, wanting not to lose the rainforest, wanting the water to boil, wanting not to have cancer, wanting to be home by dark, wanting not to run out of gas, as each of us wants the other to be watching at the end, as both of us want not to leave the other alone, as wanting to love beyond this meat and bone, we gaze across breakfast and pretend. So let's end the tale with two old favorites by Wendell Berry. They are uplifting. After all, hope springs eternal. When despair for the world grows in me, and I wake in the night at the least sound, in fear of what my life and my children's lives may be, I go and lie down where the wood drake rests in his beauty on the water and the great Huron feeds. I come into the peace of wild things who do not tax their lives with forethought of grief. I come into the presence of still water and feel above me the day-blind stars waiting with their light. For just a little time, I rest in the grace of this world and am free. Be that as it may. I am done with apologies. If contrariness is my inheritance and destiny, so be it. If it is my mission to go in at exits and come out at entrances, so be it. I have planted by the stars in defiance of the experts, and tilled somewhat by incantation and by singing, and reaped as I knew by luck and heaven's favor in spite of the best advice. If I have been caught so often laughing at funerals, that was because I knew the dead were already slipping away, preparing a comeback, and can I help it? And if at weddings I have gritted and gnashed my teeth, it was because I knew where that bridegroom had sunk his manhood, and knew it would not be resurrected by a damn piece of cake. Dance, they told me, and you know I stood still. And while they stood quiet in line at the gate of the kingdom, I danced. Pray, they said, and I laughed, covering myself in the earth's brightness, and then stole off gray into the midst of a revel and prayed like an orphan. When they said, I know that my Redeemer liveth, I told them, he's dead. And when they told me God is dead, I answered, He goes fishing every day in the Kentucky River, and I see him often. When they asked me what I like now to contribute, I said no. And when they had collected in this church of all churches more than they needed, then I gave them all that I had. And then when they asked me to join them, you know I said I wouldn't, and then went off by myself and did more than all of them would have asked. So be it. So be it. Going against men, I have heard at times a deep harmony, thrumming in the mixture. And when they ask me, "What is it you hear?" I tell them I'll be damned if I know. Thanks for listening.
So be it.